Okay, we're live.
We're live? Okay. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our third year of Coffee with Commissioners. We started this, obviously, a couple years ago. This is our second event of 2026, and we're going to have one more event in October, and we'll give the details of that at the end of the session. I am Commissioner Jill Crawford, Commissioner Sabrina Christian Bennett.
Hello, everyone.
and we have some people I'd like to introduce in our audience. Cassidy Parble is our clerk, and we have Sam, who is IT, and Pat back there, who is IT. And just as a reminder, we are videotaping this. It's being recorded just for your information. And we also have with us from the engineer's office, our engineer, Larry Jenkins. Mike Collins, and Kelly. Thank you. So thank you for being with us this morning. Just to give an overview of the Coffee with Commissioners, this purpose is to allow an open forum for citizens of Portage County to learn about county government, county projects, just to have this informal discussion with us. And we're going to present some topics, both Commissioner Bennett and I. And, we're open for discussion. If you want to ask questions while we're talking about going over the topic, that's fine. And we'll also leave some time at the end to answer any questions. And I'm sure we'll both, be around for a few minutes afterwards. So with that, are there any questions before we get started? Okay, great. We'll get started.
Take it away.
Yep. Take it away, Sabrina.
Good morning, everyone. I'm, again, Sabrina Christian Bennett, your county commissioner, one of three. Form of government, meaning we're right underneath, like, the governor's office. We're under that form of government, whereas there's also a charter form. Charter form, there's two, out of 88 counties, there's two governments that are charter form, and that's Summit County and Cuyahoga County. All of our actions are made either with a majority vote, making it very critical to work with colleagues, or all of us agree to something. Although we may not always agree, which is not a bad thing, right? We want someone with different ideas, mindsets. We must respectfully disagree and keep the citizens' best interests at the forefront. The most important thing that a commissioner does, though, I know we hold the purse string, but is stay in touch with the citizens. We work for you. We have, now according to the quasi-census, we have about 163,000 people in Portage County. So we have 163,000 bosses, because that is who votes and who puts us into office. We get calls either a lot of times over flooding issues. We may get calls on roads or about taxes, just to name a few things that we get calls on. I've also been known to get calls pretty much almost every year on the trick-or-treat schedule. I don't know how I retain that title, but I do get calls on the trick-or-treat schedule. And I'm telling you, the public is relentless on judgment, though, because I posted it out of the Record Courier, and then I got a bunch of people saying, well, you didn't include this church trunk or treat or not. I'm like, I can't win. I'm like, this is just for everyone to enjoy. Please post it in the comments so everyone can see. I'm sorry I missed it. We fiscally oversee the general fund budget to the county of about $78 million currently, and we are the appropriating authority for all the county tax dollars. We balance the residents' needs for services and finite taxpayer funds. So we fund 8 other elected officials, such as the prosecutor, the recorder, the auditor, the sheriff's department, to name a few. And then we also fund 7 judges. So that's probably our toughest job, is that we have a lot of different mandated requirements versus wants and needs, and everyone tends to come to us in a silo because they're just looking out for their department or their elected official office, and so that's the tough part for us. It's a balancing act. So far, our casino tax revenue, I talked about a couple of the revenues, and Jill's going to cover it more in detail. The casino tax revenue has been steady for the past 2 years, and is projected to remain around the same level as in 2026. And again, Jill will probably give you some ideas as to where the revenues are. On the casino, sales tax is higher. So everything's going good in the right direction as far as taxes. But the total resources in the general fund for fiscal year 26 is currently an estimated $78 million, consisting of about a $63 million in current revenues, and we had a $15 million in cash carryover. We have been fiscally responsible. I've been a commissioner for 11 years. We are going on 11 years that we have not had to issue any new debt, not go out for any new notes or bonds. We have a AA bond rating, which is stellar and impacts the terms that if we did have to borrow, that we could borrow at. Like I said, probably the most challenging part of our job is to make sure that we work with the other elected officials and the judges to make sure that a lot of them have an executive authority where they are statutory requirements, and it's our task to ensure each of them are funded properly to carry out their statutory duties. So sometimes that makes us popular, sometimes not. We have numerous other duties. We fund like economic development programs, such as the Portage Development Board. Each year we're the largest contributor to the development board. And we work with them to invest, attract, and new businesses and create jobs here in Portage County. As a matter of fact, in 2025, we had 119 new projects in the county for economic development. We had 5,274 jobs retained and about 5,857 new jobs with a total investment of $963,602 in total investment into the county. LG Chem is one of our biggest landings that we've had, as well as Kendra Tire recently. We were just at a ribbon cutting for that. So we are attracting talents from outside of Ohio, as well as a lot of our current businesses are choosing to stay here and to grow here. And I'm sure you guys are seeing that a lot of expansions going on. So we're very grateful for that. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but Ohio was named #1 for economic business development across the country, which is really good. That's very good for us. I just recently was at the development board. I actually serve as a secretary there. And at the development board, they were talking about one customer who came here. It's Vega. They can't talk enough about the good employee staff recruitment that they've had. Which is good to hear, because a lot of times all you hear from employers currently is there's not enough people, we can't get people trained that are trained, we have to start from ground zero, and there's all kinds of issues in the employment world. But it was nice to hear a positive that we do have a good workforce here in Portage County. We have numerous other duties that we do. Not only do we fund economic development, but we oversee the county's JFS that provides vital aid to the county's most vulnerable citizens. I mean, that covers let's see here, Children Protective Services. We do assistance for folks that are on welfare or food assistance. This also includes workforce under JFS, which is Ohio Means Jobs. If you know of anyone looking for a job, they can go right to, it used to be the old Val Edge flower shop in Ravenna, and they would be happy to help you. They help with resume writing. They help with career path decisions and stuff. And then of course they have a posting of all the available jobs in the county. I'm sorry, I got dry mouth today. And then also with the Jobs and Family Services, it also includes Medicare, our Medicaid, nutritional and income support, and preventing elder and child abuse. SNAP benefits were reduced, as we frequently hear about. And so when the commissioners were made aware of that, and it was during COVID and we had ARPA funds, we actually allocated $1 million to all the food banks so that we could make sure that our people were getting fed. Because a lot of people, if you recall, lost their jobs or didn't have any jobs at that time, so couldn't go to work. So that's one of the things. We're always aware of what's going on with our citizens and where the wants and the needs are. We support essential community infrastructure, including bridges, roads, and water and sewer systems. And as we said, we've got our engineer's office here. We work very well together, and I have to give a kudos out to them because the only thing that we fund for the engineer's office is tax map. Everything else, they are very successful at getting grants from either AMATs or just other federal grants to help with the road improvements. They've got a lot of bridge replacements, it seems like, this year. And you've probably seen some. Years ago, we had one on Liberty Street. That was one of our projects that's here in Garrettsville. And so they have been doing a stellar job and keeping our roads safe and just the maintenance on them, which is not an easy task, nor is it a cheap task. So they do very good at that. So thank you, Engineer's Office. We also appoint to boards and commissions. So if anyone's interested in getting involved, I would suggest that you go to our commissioner website and see what openings we have on what boards, because we're always looking for volunteers to go on the boards and have a say in the community. So another thing is we hold title to all the county properties, including like the courthouse, that's under the commissioners, even the jail, the sheriff runs the operations, but we own the building out there. Same things with like the admin, any of the buildings that our departments tend to be in that the county owns, they're all under the commissioners, Board of Commissioners. So those are just a few things. We have a lot of things. Hot buttons lately for us has been like TIFs. Does anyone know what tax increment financing is? That is where a builder or developer comes in and they want like help with infrastructure and stuff. So they'll ask for like a tax reduction for the first 20, 30 years on a project. A lot of times they'll negotiate that they make the school whole. And if it's in a township, hopefully they have a JUD and it's going to be beneficial to them to get income revenue from income tax in there. So we deal with a lot of that. And as you know, the big concern is taxes have the potential to go away. Now, they didn't get enough signatures this last time, but it's my understanding they're still going to continue on. So that's always like in the back of our minds is, okay, what if that goes away? So why live in Portage County? Portage County has, does anyone know how many cities we have?
6.
No, a little less. River?
4.
4. Can you name them?
Aurora, Ravenna. Thank you.
Okay, very good, River. We have River here from Congressman Joyce's office as well. Thank you. And then we have 6 villages and 18 townships in the county. Portage is a very suburban rural, so suburbs include like Akron, Canton, Cleveland, and Youngstown. So we're a very desirable location because we are close to all the major interstates. You can get anywhere from any of the major cities within like 40 minutes in Northeast Ohio, whether it's Cleveland, it's Youngstown, Akron, or Stark County and Canton. We're at a very good place. And I don't know if you guys remember, but several years ago, we were in the line for the site for the next missile defense site. And one of the things the study said was it was because of our geographic location and that they could fit their tankers under bridges here in Portage County. And that's one of the reasons we were considered in the top 3 in the country. Now, of course, we didn't get the bid. New York did. But then they said, oh, great, you won, but no funding. Goodbye. So there's no missile defense site here in the eastern part of the country. Another reason people like it here, we have low unemployment. Our unemployment rate is right now at 3.7%, which is very good, comparable to the state, which is 3.6. So we have plenty of jobs. So if you know of anyone looking, talk to our OMJ, go to our website. You can also talk to the development board because they are out there pounding the pavements with like manufacturing and other businesses that are always hiring, and a lot of times they will pay for your training because there's fewer and fewer folks that are certified or qualified, but they are willing to invest in the employee. Let's see here, we have new, another reason you want to come here, we have new housing developments and projects are up. We have a beautiful park district. Does anyone here utilize our parks? Yeah, love the parks. All right, so that's just to give you an idea. Does anyone have a question about what the commissioners do? But the main thing is, not only do we stay in touch with the citizens, that's the main focus we do, but the other project or the other responsibility, of course, as someone said, we hold the purse strings, so we fund all the county departments. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Jill. She's going to go into a little more detail as far as the budgetary process and concerns.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sabrina. As Sabrina mentioned, I'm just going to talk about our budgeting process and really kind of focus on the resources that come into the county. I think a lot of times, the focus is on, where all the expenditures are going, but let's talk about, what resources that we have. So I wanted to start off just with a general discussion about budget, and counties maintain a variety of funds that support programs and services. And I'm an accountant, so I obviously see I have my calculator, it goes with me everywhere I go. But I just wanted to make sure that, I said fund, and a little accounting joke is, don't mistake that for fun, because we do. So fund and fun, F-U-N-D and F-U-N is kind of interchangeable for us accountants. So that's the only accounting humor you'll get from me. Okay, I promise. But budgeting by fund is a distinguishing feature for the public sector. I've spent many years in the private sector as a CPA, and fund accounting is its own basic animal, if you will. Ohio counties and other local political subdivisions were required by state law to adopt an annual budget by or before January 1st. So before anybody starts to ask a question about that, in 2026, we did not adopt a permanent budget by January 1st of 2026. What we did is we adopted a temporary budget. And I'll go into that in just a few minutes as to why we did that. But high-level budgeting is a two-step process. Just like you and me, we have our checking savings account, and the first step is you have to say, how much resources do you have? And then you look at your expenditures. And hopefully, at the end of the day, your income is more than your expenditures. So it's a two-step process. And with the tax budget, our tax budget is due every year, needs to be filed by July 15th to the auditor, our county auditor. And the tax budget is, what that does is it looks at the resources that we expect for 2027. So we're sitting here in 2026. We have 6 months of real data, if you will. We still have to project basically, what the rest of 2026 is, but the state is saying, hey, you know what, this tax budget, you need to project, you need to forecast what 2027 is going to have. So there's a lot of projections, forecasting done in our Department of Budget and Financial Management team. They do a great job. They pull all that information together. But what you're going to see on our website is the tax budget, is a copy of the tax budget. So what that is that's certifying our resources that we expect for 2027. And then we have all our elected officials and departments. They will, provide their somewhat wish list of expenditures. So I think there's some confusion that is the budget that we're approving for 2027, but it's not. It's like, hey, I want a Mercedes, so I'm going to put that down, but I'm probably going to get the Chevy, right? So So it's a wish list. So when you look at the budget for the tax budget in the column for 2027, and I have a copy here just like as the first page that you could see, but we have the different columns here, and at the top it has our resources, but then it has the detail of all the departments and their somewhat wish lists for the year. So don't think that that's the budget we pass, because remember, that's for 2027. They're asking us to look out way ahead and project those numbers. Okay? And then, so once we have the tax budget filed with the county auditor by July 15, we basically then, in the fall, the Department of Budget and Financial Management, her and her team, will work with the different departments and elected officials as to what they expect their expenditures to be. So they'll work through that, and then in December, what we'll do is we'll adopt a temporary budget. So why would we adopt a temporary budget versus a permanent budget? Well, as I said, it's more time to realize any significant changes and trends for forecasting that's occurred. So when we're sitting in December, 6 months from now, December of 2026, and we've already forecasted what we thought 2027 was going to be, well, maybe things have changed. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in the next, 6 months, maybe interest rates, the economy. So maybe we need to adjust our resources, our estimated resources down or up. So it gives us the ability to, look back and say, well, that's what we projected 6 months ago, but realistically, we think this is going to happen. And the second thing is it's a confirmation of our cash carryover balance. Commissioner Bennett mentioned that part of our budget is, the cash carryover from the prior year. And we really need to manage that, because the cash carryover balance is at the state level, you can get into fiscal caution, fiscal watch, or fiscal emergency. And we hear that a lot, I think more so with like school districts, hearing that. But as a rule of thumb, the least that you would want as your cash carryover is 30 days of your prior year expenditure. So basically 1 month, right? So if, I'm just going to take an easy number to divide by, but let's say our expenditures for 2026 were $72 million exactly. If you divide that by 12, that gives you at least $6 million as a carryover that we would want to carry into 2027. So it gives us an opportunity by adopting a temporary budget in December of 2020, which I'm assuming we will do, but as we did in last year in December of 2025, we adopted that temporary budget. We were able to, confirm our cash carryover, kind of look at the resources, made sure they made sense. And then by April 1st, we needed to adopt the permanent budget for the 2026 calendar year. And one other little thing, and I don't know if this will ever come up, but you'll know this little fact. Counties, townships, we operate on a calendar year, but the state and federal governments operate on a fiscal year. So what's a fiscal year mean? It just means it's not a calendar year. And they operate June through July. So there's a little bit of distinction there. So to give you a definition of, there's different types of funds. And you'll hear, general fund, you'll hear other funds that are mentioned out there. But we as the Board of Commissioners, we're responsible for the appropriation of the general fund only. So the general fund, and we'll talk in a few minutes about the different resources that go into the general fund, but there's also funds for special revenue funds. And what those are, basically, a good example of this would be court fees. So if you go to court, you have fees that you have to pay as part of the whole process. And those fees are broken down into various different pieces, if you will. And some of those pieces go into what we call special revenue funds. So you might see something that's like an IT charge maybe. So it goes into maybe the court special revenue fund for IT.
Computerization.
So, yeah. So basically those funds are for an intended use only. So it can only be used for those specific things.
It's restricted.
So they're restricted in what they can be used for. So the special revenue funds are out there. And we have, that is not under our control. That's basically the different elected officials, different departments, they'll have the authority to make expenditures from those funds. We also have debt service funds, which is like the loan funds. Capital project funds, which would be for any large-scale, building or other capital project funds out there. And we also have what we call enterprise funds. And enterprise funds can be the best described, in my opinion, as its own kind of little business. Basically, it is a fee is charged for the use of
Specific service.
Yes, thank you, Sabrina. For a specific service. So a couple of those would be the water department, solid waste department, which is our recycling department, and like the buildings part, or excuse me, the building department is not. But basically, you pay a fee, and they're kind of treating their whole operation as a business. So they need to make sure that the fees that they are, that they're asking for, they're charging, is covering their expenses. So those are enterprise funds. And then the last couple of funds are called internal service funds. That's kind of self-explanatory. They're internal to the county, so different chargebacks between maybe departments. And fiduciary funds. And fiduciary funds are those funds in which, it's like unclaimed funds. It's like we're just holding those funds. We're a custodian of those funds. They're not funds that can be used. So, okay, so let's get started. And I can talk about numbers forever, so I'll try to keep it short. But let's just talk about our buckets of resources in our general fund. And as Commissioner Bennett mentioned, our resources were, we anticipate around $65 to $63 million of resources coming in. That doesn't include our cash carryover, right? So the number she mentioned was a little bit larger because you carry that over, obviously, every year. Your ending balance, if you will. So what bucket of taxes or what bucket of resources does somebody think is our biggest resources that comes into the general fund? And I know Sabrina, Commissioner Bennett, knows these answers, so I'm going to ask her from refrain from answering. But
I'm not going to win a donut.
I'll go get you a donut. So who thinks, does anybody have a guess as to what the biggest source of revenue that comes into the county? Pardon me?
Taxes?
Taxes, and what type of taxes do you think?
Property?
Okay, property taxes back there?
Sales tax?
Sales tax, yeah. The answer is actually sales tax. Sales tax is our largest bucket, if you will, of resources that comes into the county for us to spend into the general fund. And does anyone know what the Portage County sales tax rate is? 7%. 7%.
Well, it's 7.25. Who knows the answer why?
So it is 7%. 0.2% came off, I think it was 2019. So that is brought it back down to 7%. So it is 7% currently. And does anyone know what portion the county gets of that 7%? Any guesses?
It's a measly amount. Give you a tip.
It's 1%.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of people say, well, you have 7%. Our sales tax is 7%. That goes into the bucket of the general fund. No, it doesn't. So we get 1%. The state of Ohio gets 5.75% of that. Goes to the state revenue fund, general revenue fund. And then PARTA, our transportation, gets the 0.25. So those are the bucket, that's the biggest bucket of our resources. And for that, for 2027, our tax budget took, we're estimating that to be about $29 million for our sales and use tax bucket for 2027. So next is property taxes, and I know somebody had mentioned property taxes. And let me get to my schedule for that. So for property taxes, we collect, that stays within the county. I'll explain this in a second, but it's approximately $47 million. So of that does not include the amount that goes to the schools. So when you get your property tax bill, what I like to do is on the left-hand side, and I'm assuming it's going to be the same format as they have in the past, but they have a little pie chart. And that pie chart is really, really a great thing to look at to see where your property taxes go. So if you would look, the schools get approximately 60 to 70% of your property taxes. But the rest of that property tax is what I'm going to talk about. And of that amount, the general fund, we get about 0.24%, or about $11 million of that 47 million, excuse me. And then what's the biggest buckets that go to, within the county? Well, when you pass levies, they're for specific purposes. So we have the mental health. They get about, gosh, I need my glasses and my contacts. About 17%. So I misspoke. It's 24% for the general fund. Mental health gets about 8 million of that, or 17%. Our Board of Developmental Disabilities gets about 17 million, which is 37%. And then child welfare and other JFS type things, they get about 9.6 million, which is 20%. So basically going into the general fund is about $12 million, because a part of that is carved out for our debt service, because we do have debt that we are paying down that will be paid off by 2030, I believe. So property taxes are, the next largest bucket, if you will, after sales tax, and then we have property taxes. So another piece of the revenue sources that we get relates to investment income. So we have the general fund, and then we have all the special revenue funds and all those other funds that I spoke about. So they have various balances in them throughout the year. So just like you and me, what do? If we have a savings account, we want to earn interest on that, right? So what we do, the treasurer is in charge of that, and we also have an investment advisory board in which Commissioner Bennett and I are part of as well, but those funds are invested. So investment income is also another fairly large bucket of resources that come in, and that's anywhere from like $5 to $7 million a year. And then a couple of the other smaller sources of income, some that people usually talk about, are the casino tax, which Commissioner Bennett mentioned. And basically we get about 2.3 million, around 2 million, $2.3 million for the casino tax. But when I looked a little bit further into the casino tax to try to understand that, the tax is really 33% of gross casino revenue. And what counties get the most, most tax for that? Well, it's the ones in which the casinos are located. So, 51% of that tax that they collect is distributed quarterly to the 88 counties, but then, if you basically have the casino in your county, you're going to get more of that, because the rest of the percentages break it out based on different factors. So we get about $2 million from that. And then we have the local government fund, the LGF, if you will. So if you remember me saying that the sales tax that goes to the state is 5.75%. So other taxes obviously are collected by the state. So that would be income tax, commercial activity tax, if you remember what that is. It's called the CAT tax. It doesn't apply to a lot of businesses right now because they really increased the threshold for that. But that replaced, and I'm going to really date myself, but the franchise tax that was back in the late 90s and in early 2000s, there was a franchise tax, and that provided a lot of income to the state of Ohio. Well, in 2004, 2005, they replaced that with the commercial activity tax. And so the commercial activity tax goes into that state general revenue fund tax bucket, if you will. So at the state level, they said, okay, well, we're going to share that with our local governments, right? So of that pot of money that sits at the state level for income taxes, sales taxes, commercial activity taxes, probably some other little taxes I'm not thinking about, each county, the local governments get 1.7% of that. So 1.7% of that bucket comes down to Portage County. And I think in the past it's been around the $5-6 million amount that comes down. So you think, oh, okay, we get $5 or $6 million. Well, we don't. We have to share that with, as Commissioner Bennett mentioned, we have 4 cities. We also have several villages within the county, and we also have 18 townships. I think it's 18 townships.
Yeah, 18.
18 townships. So every one of them, there's a formula, and we have to share that local government fund income that comes down from the state also gets dispersed to them. So at the end of the day, we get approximately 40% of that. So between $5 and $6 million, we only get 40% of that amount. So when you add all those up, that gets you probably 90% of what our general fund is made up of comes from those, let's say, 5 sources of income. So that gives us, the $60 million or so of the amount that we work with. And the one thing I did want to mention, and Commissioner Bennett brought it up, we're feeling kind of a squeeze right now, and part of that was we received the ARPA funds back in, we received $31 million of ARPA funds in total, approximately, and $15 million of that was received in July of 2021, and the other remaining approximately $15 million was received in January of 2022. And where did that money, get allocated to? And Commissioner Bennett did mention this, but $11 million went to approximately $11 million went to like general operations. So $11 million went to general operations. You were allowed to carve out a specific portion, approximately $11 million, for what they call like general operations for your loss of revenue. $5 million went to our emergency management agency for safety support. $1 million, as Commissioner Bennett mentioned, went to the food and security support. 1.5 went to stormwater upgrades, and the largest chunk went, 12.5 million went to wastewater upgrades. So that's where the ARPA money was spent, and that was to be spent. It all has to be spent by the end of this year. So included in the cash carryovers, of the last couple years, we were very fortunate, as many local governments were, to receive these funds, but now, those have been spent down. So,
yeah, I think it was a double-edged sword. I always said ARPA money made you look like, wow, we've got all this money on this balance sheet. We're able to do things that we haven't been able to do or would have ever done in my tenure as a commissioner. And now, and unfortunately, government, when they have money, tends to grow. And then when the money goes away, then we have to cut back and trim back. Unfortunately, that's just like the government mantra. And so, because then as they're growing, they're like needing more and more people. But then when the money goes away, then we've got to scale back. So it's typical.
Yeah. So yes, thank you. And so basically, that's where our resources come from. We estimated for 2026 those buckets to be about $65 million. So like I said, we're halfway through 2026. We'll finish up the year for 2026, but we forecasted about $63 million of resources from those sources I mentioned for 2027. So I anticipate, I don't know for sure, but I anticipate we'll probably follow the same same thing that we did last year in adopting a temporary budget by December 31st, January 1st of 2027. And then we'll kind of true up, confirm some numbers, make sure we're a little bit more on target with our cash carryover and our resources to make sure that they are where, we think they should be, so we can adopt that permanent budget by April 1st. So, and then on the expenditure side, we have to then work with, as Commissioner Bennett said, we work with the other elected officials and other departments to allocate to them out of the general fund the funds that they need to carry out their statutory duties, right? That's what, the general fund is doing, is supporting, what we have to support as a county. But another thing to think about too is, we also have state mandates that we have to meet. One of them, just out of several of them, are for Job and Family Services. That we have certain matches that we have to make based on the level of activity, and another one is indigent defense. So that is through the Public Defender's Office. If it's somebody is needed to be appointed attorney because they cannot afford one. The state pays, and I think it's 82% now.
They're looking now. We had a survey we had to fill out in order to. They're trying to figure out what our rate will be, and it can drop in the middle of it. Back when I first became a commissioner, it was like 42% reimbursement. So when you hear us talk about a rate for indigent defense, that's what the state will reimburse us. So the remaining balance, the 58%, is on the county. Right now, it's at 82%, but it could change in the middle of the year, so we just have to be prepared because it is an it's a funded mandate, but it's not a completely funded mandate.
Right.
And we've been lobbying for years at the state for the state to take over that. It's their responsibility that's being pushed down on us at the local level.
So there's a lot of things that can change throughout the year, just like Commissioner Bennett said. They're still working up that number. How much is that reimbursement rate going to be for this year? So even though we have X amount of dollars, we can't allocate all that out because we've got contingencies, right? We have things that might come up, just like you and your household, the water heater breaks or the furnace goes out. You have things that come up. So, we need to make sure that we have reserves set aside so we can adequately meet those things. So that's really all I had. I wasn't going to go into. I just wanted to focus on the resources because I think, like I said, lots of times we focus on the expenditure side of it, and I just wanted to make the community, citizens aware that basically, your sales tax. I think a lot of you were kind of surprised to know that only 1% of that 7% stays here in the county. So, are there any questions that we can take? Yes, sir.
In full disclosure, I'm a Garrettsville councilman.
Okay.
I just want to compliment the commissioners for their involvement. Like as an example, when we had our amphitheater ribbon cutting, all three of you were there. When we had a pancake breakfast, Mike came there. We had our Garrettsville Summerfest parade. Unfortunately, Sabrina was right behind me in the parade. You had to hear my music the whole way. But the fact that you guys really get involved. I mean, like everyone's like, you guys really, to me, walk the walk. And like, I must think all three of you think sleep is overrated because besides your jobs, you get really involved in the community. So thank you for that. My one question, where do we stand on lengthening the runway to handle corporate jets? I know we're doing the taxiways, and I saw your pictures of that. You guys are doing that. But any idea when the runway is going to be expanded so corporate jets can land there?
That I don't know because we're in the process of extending the taxiway A and B, but that's just resurfacing them.
We're relocating taxiway A and then and then surfacing, and then we're resurfacing the one. But as far as the extension to the runway, that will take a couple years, and it takes a lot of money to get to. But even extending that runway, there's always that big fear factor that thinks that there's going to be a 747 Boeing landing there. It is not. Like I said, it'd just be a larger corporate plane that can land. It's not going to be the big jet engines that are able to come in.
And so they're supposed to, my understanding, that they're supposed to, is going to go over Diagonal Road, and they're going to put an underpass in Diagonal Road. It's going to go under the runway or something like that?
Are you talking about Infirmary Road?
Infirmary,
yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, that has been the talks of one of the solutions because we have safety forces and other of our operations that are crucial and critical on that road. But again, it's in the plan. So it's something we'll be chipping at. I know Rob, our airport director, is definitely in favor of it, and we support him totally because, I mean, if you guys have never had a chance to go and meet Rob or take a tour of the airport, I encourage you to do that. He's very passionate about flight, and you can tell, and so, but anyways, but yes, it is in the master plan or the comprehensive plan, is to extend that. We don't have a definitive date because it also takes funding. And so right now we've focused on the critical areas that need improvements, which was the taxiway, the north taxiway. Because I mean, you went out there and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was like grass grown through the blacktop. I mean, it looked like it was a deserted runway, but it was still being used. So, and we were very fortunate with that. That project was like $3 million, and so we got all the money from the FAA except like $182,000 match funds, which then the state kicked in. So it's not going to cost us anything to do, and that's a major repair, and for the operations because it's a major economic development engine out there. We've got people calling all the time wanting to be able to store their planes there, to be able to fly in and out. So it's definitely something to watch over the next several years to evolve.
And kudos to you for hiring Hardigan. That was an exceptional hire.
Yeah.
Like, I talked to him. He's outstanding.
Yeah.
He's outstanding. Kudos to you guys for getting him on board. I don't know how you did it. I don't know how you could afford it.
Yeah. Next.
Good morning, and thank you for offering this transparent presentation. We appreciate the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the county. My name is Debbie Boop. We work in a small insurance agency in Ravenna, and I have an ask. I need help with the Job and Family Services. We need resources in the Medicaid market. So here's what's happening. You may be aware that in Ohio, many changes are happening. And we have personally gotten outreach from the local hospital of people's plans who are being switched that don't have access to the local hospital anymore. So we're trying to get the word out. They have options. They can make changes. They need to talk to someone. We are trying to get a resource at the local Job and Family Services that can collaborate with us so that we can make this seamless for Portage County residents. Is that something you can help with?
Yeah, I can give you our director's phone number. Her name's Kelly Jo Jeffries, and I'm sure that's something she's very interested in. I know we are hearing across the board from everyone, especially people like in the DD world, developmental disabilities. I mean, it's not like, I understand they wanted to roll back the expansion and they wanted to get people off the roads that are willing and able-bodied workers, but unfortunately, we're hitting people. It seems like that there's no option. I mean, we've got kids out at Hattie's that they're not ripping the system off. They're never going to be able to work. I mean, we have to make sure that we at least take care and secure it for the most vulnerable that don't have an option outside of Medicaid. So. I know River and I are going to go see Steve Kalecki at Hattie's because he's raised the concern. I know the Board of DD is having issues financially because of it. And there's a lot of different sectors that a lot of them rely heavily on the Medicaid reimbursement for their operations because they take people that most others would not accept the Medicaid. So it is a concern. So see me afterwards and I'll get you that number.
Thank you.
In the back?
I was wondering, do you folks have a position, are you taking a position on this current thing about abolishing property tax? Because so many of the entities in the county and the county itself, that's where our funding comes from. I mean, the state is not reliable.
And all we do is we're trying to educate people that please understand this is the impact to you. I'm not saying you should vote for it, you shouldn't. I just need to make sure you're educated and you understand the impact it's going to have.
There's a lot of services that are, supported by property taxes, and yes, it's something that
Do we have any contingency plans, and if this goes down,
What are we gonna do?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the nice part is we won't be alone. You're going to have an entire state.
Mhm.
Yes.
I mean, they need to carefully think about that, but we'll deal with what cards we're dealt with. I mean, that's all we can do right now. We've chose to stay focused and keep moving forward, but yet, like I mentioned earlier, it's always in the back of our minds. What if this goes away? So again, this is where we have to really do a true up on our budgeting and skill set going forward in case.
Did you have a question, ma'am? Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. This is a little bit of history on the roots of this property tax business.
Yeah.
Years ago, before 2000, people were upset about this.
Yeah.
And there was a meeting at one of the gyms, I think the gym at Crestwood, and one of the state reps was there. And at that point, the way schools were funded was declared, I think, unconstitutional.
Unconstitutional. Yes.
It was criticized.
Yeah.
The state rep said, well, they told us it was wrong, but they didn't tell us how to do it. I thought that was the legislator's job.
It is.
And so it looks to me as if this has been getting kicked down the can. The can has been getting kicked down the road
Yeah.
for 35 years at least.
Oh, at
More than
least.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure. I'm sure. And I was at the meeting in just outside of Kent about property taxes, among other things, and it was horrifying. Between the blurring of church and state, which was just astonishing, and the lack of understanding, apparently, about property taxes go for all sorts of things. Yeah, the schools get a big share.
They get the majority.
And
Yes.
they need, I'm a retired teacher. The role of good education is incalculable. But I don't think a lot of people, we look at our tax bills and many people have their backs against the wall. And I think as close as you are to all of us, you understand that. I'm not sure that by the time people get to Columbus, they understand that worth a rip. I think the best that can be done to begin with is educate people about what really happens. Okay, no property taxes.
Yeah.
You want to pave your own road in front of your place? What if your neighbor doesn't pave his? And we go back to bucket brigades for fire service. I think there was a real demonstration at that meeting that people didn't really understand. They understood what the amount of the bill was.
Yeah.
That was
Not the impact.
no. And with the treasurer and the auditor both having Irish-sounding names, I never keep them straight. But one of them was there and spoke about it a little bit. So, I'm glad that the question got asked. I was curious about what your relationship is to that impulse or that movement. What's your role in relation to that?
Well, our role as county commissioners, and Jill, you can jump in any time, is, we're the appropriating authority, and you heard all the offices that, JFS is a prime example. They take care of the most vulnerable people in our communities that can't take care of themselves, and they're not just like deadbeats, they're on the system and playing the system. We think about those folks. But I also, on the flip side, I think about people that are being forced out of their homes. And when we first had our first revow and the taxes went soaring, they had an option to do a 3-year look back to soften the blow because they had got so inflated. And they chose not to do it. They chose to do the 1 year, and we knew this was going to be devastating. I mean, some people, my property went up like 35%, some people even more. And it's like, you know, if you're on a fixed income, how do you, and you get a 3% COLA, how do you make up the rest without practically being forced out of your home? And that's what I don't like. The movement to abolish property taxes, I think it is part of their strategic plan in that they didn't tell you the impact. They just want, they've got people riled up because times are a little tight right now. So everyone's looking for money and how best to do it, then cut property taxes. But everyone thinks in a silo, just like they come to us for funding. And they're thinking, okay, I get $3,000 more a year, I don't have to pay. But they're not thinking what impact this is going to have. Because it's not just your $3,000 tax payment, it's everyone's, and what services are being provided. And again, I'm not here to tell you to vote for it or vote against it. I am just here to educate people on the impact it's going to have. And it's up to you to vote how you want.
Yeah. And they did talk about, you know, if they were to abolish property taxes, you know, maybe we would have an adjustment to sales tax. But it would be this huge,
Like
adjustment
20%
to sales tax, which is unreasonable. It's, you know, very, very unreasonable. But, you know, I do believe the state legislators now are trying to push through reform, and they're really, really trying to, you know, like you said, it's been there for 35 plus years, and you know, so we got to start somewhere. So they're really trying to push through some reform to bring some of those taxes down.
You know, and it seems to me that, okay, so to make the reform in the halls of government in Columbus, I imagine that there could be some pretty intense conversations, to say the least. But the people who are going to be affected, those people need to understand what the effects are.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that's been done. You know, you look at the bill and say, OMG. And the obvious thing is just to stop paying those. You know, this may be a time to have billboards all over the state about, look what would happen if we had a sales tax to compensate for all of that.
Right.
You know,
but you know, that was their idea was, well, you can just go increase your sales tax by 20 some, you know, up to 20%. But the thing that I always said was the very people they're claiming they're trying to help, which is like disabled folks, veterans, senior citizens, are the one you're going to hurt with that 20% sales tax. That they struggle with a tight budget as it is to buy food and stuff, and it won't stop there. A lot of times when states do that, they expand what they tax then. Then food's taxable, prescriptions are taxable then. So it's not just raise it. I mean, like I said, it's a shell game is basically what it is. Unless, you know, people want to wait, you know, an hour, 2 hours for an ambulance to come because you're not going to have the money to sustain it. And again, you know, life's about choices. So you have to choose what you want.
You know, I've been in a state or two that tax groceries, real groceries, not just Glad Wrap and things like that.
Yeah.
And that was shocking.
I know.
Just to be taxed on a real necessity just was, it seemed to me it was unconscionable.
Yeah, and a lot of those states, you know, they might not have an income tax. So, you know, you kind of have to look at the whole state and say, okay, well, they don't have an income tax, or maybe their property taxes are a lot less. I mean, I understand where you're coming from for sure. I mean, you know, start taxing groceries would be astronomical, right?
And prescriptions for seniors. The very people that they're claiming to try to help is who they're going to hurt the most.
Yeah, like just follow what you said, Sabrina. At Summerfest, there was they were getting petitions to sign to get on the ballot. So I went up to one of the individuals. I said, I am 100% in agreement with you. There's probably no one that wants to pay more tax. I'm with you there. I said, but so we abolished that. How do we fund these other programs? I mean, there's people in need. How do we do it? And the person didn't have an answer. I mean, like, so yeah, I mean, like, I understand you're only looking at part of the equation. I agree. I don't want to pay more tax. Nobody wants to pay more taxes. But we have, as a civilized society, we have a responsibility, like you said, to take care of those. They're not, they're just people in need. They have major challenges in their life. They can't do it on their own, and we as a civilized society need to help. So I agree. If you're going to cut that, but how are you going to fund the programs? And I was surprised. No answers. None.
You were surprised?
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, we're gonna.
I have a comment.
Oh, yeah.
I want to thank you for your vote on the, I'll call it the windmills,
Yes.
on energy and how we deal with the counties. I appreciated that vote very much. Thank you. I was at that meeting.
Okay,
What a great turnout.
Yeah.
Democracy in progress, huh?
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Great.
I'm curious about the bike path. This might not be your domain, but I noticed, or my wife noticed, driving down Pioneer Trail, a lot of people opposing that bike lane that's going to connect our beautiful headwaters
Hero
bike
Trail.
trail to Aurora, which is going to broaden it to Chagrin, blah, blah, blah. What's going on with that, or you don't really have a comment?
That is
That's a
more.
park
That's
district.
yes.
Yeah,
I was just
park
going to say
district.
that's the park
Yeah.
district and that community, and I know the community is behind that because they want it
It
expanded.
improves property values. Improve.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
I live in Manaway Township, and that's where all of the signs are. And the acronym is NIMBY, not in my backyard, and that's the objection. It has to do with privacy or fear of what will happen with strangers going past your house. I'm not sure
I
how many
understand.
vandals and thieves ride bicycles, but that's beside the
That's
point.
one of the
But
concerns.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well,
If we
at
don't
this
have
time,
any other
if
questions,
we don't have any other, we wanted to send our appreciation to the library. I didn't know if Nikki Thompson, is she in here?
She's
Oh, yeah, or
over
the.
there working.
Oh, okay. Or if you want to say anything, any library updates that you want to provide?
Well,
for us?
the first thing that I want to say is since, the property tax thing is getting talked about, just so everybody knows, we're one that people vote on, which means it doesn't go up with your home values, so you don't have to worry about that. If you do want to see that money in action, we did recently in the past year renovate some of the interior of our branch out here in Garrettsville, so please, after this, stop in, take a look around. If you don't have a library card, I'm not going to judge you. But you can go get one for free.
I
so
have a
long as
Kent
you live,
library
work-
card. Will that work here, Brian?
Yeah, a Kent to Read card will work. I will judge you for that. But stop in, take a look around, see those tax dollars at work, and if you want to see some of the community partnerships that we are a part of at work as well. The Garrettsville Hiram Rotary Club, we work alongside them. There is a brand new story walk right out in the park. So after you take a look around the library, enjoy the story walk. They just cut the ribbon on that this past Sunday.
Oh, congratulations.
Nice.
That's
So
great.
we'll be some of the first to enjoy it as well.
Yeah,
It's a neat
great.
story.
Yeah,
It's
well,
fun.
great.
But
All right.
thank you all for being here
Yeah,
as well.
thank you. Thanks. And thank you.
No, I have one more question.
Yeah.
And this may be something that shouldn't be asked at this meeting, but what's the relationship of the commissioners to data centers?
So, so that is all at the local zoning level.
Okay.
Yeah, so we really have no authority to make any
Okay.
decisions related to that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, we'd like to thank everyone for coming out this morning. I'm sure we'll stick around for a few more minutes, but thank you again. And just to let you know and to announce our last coffee with commissioners for 2026 will be this fall, and it will be in Streetsboro at the Pierce Streetsboro Library, and that will be October 28th at 9 a.m. So, thank
Hope you guys
very
can
much.
make it.
Yeah, thank you.